and welcome to the Sailing My Magic channel. My name is Duke and I am solo sailing Magic, my 2015 Lagoon Catamaran, around the world. This is what you don't want to have happen to you during a hurricane. Storm surge can be hugely powerful, but the winds at those high speeds cover a much broader area. You can have winds up to 200 miles an hour, storm surge up to 12 or 15 feet on top of the regular waves. But it will knock over boats in a boatyard, knock over docks and boats that are tied up to a dock. So what can you do about all these problems? Vunda Marina in Fiji has come up with a unique solution. They dig these cyclone pits, and the keel of your boat goes down into the cyclone pit, and then it's cushioned by tires on the sides of it, so it can't fall over like happened at Kiriakou in those prior photos. We are quickly approaching the cyclone season here in the South Pacific. Here that runs from November 1st through April 30th. The North Atlantic, which would be the Caribbean and east coast of the United States, they have the hurricane season, which is just the opposite. It runs from May until October. And the other difference between cyclones and hurricanes is that they spin in the opposite direction usually. The other thing to keep in mind that the key to success for surviving a cyclone or a hurricane is preparation. Usually you can get 24 to 48 hours notice at a minimum, and very often you can get a week or two notice of a cyclone or hurricane coming your direction. Personal safety should be the prime importance for your preparations for the cyclone season. When I lived in Belize, the house that we had mahogany wood shutters that were 2 inches thick, because when a coconut goes flying through the air at 130 miles an hour, it is deadly. So all your preparations have to be kept in mind that things can go south very quickly. There's more than one way to approach this. You can have your boat in the water, or you can have it up on shore. If you have it up on shore, you're going to have to be tied down by straps, and in the water, the usual dock is usually not strong enough to hold you. Most people will want to go up in a protected area, what they call a hurricane hole. In Central America, there's Rio Dulce, the Sweet River, in Guatemala, that's several miles upstream and is protected on all sides by mountains. In the Caribbean, you have places like Luperon, was discovered by Columbus, and it's a very protected part of the Dominican Republic. You have to go up the river a little bit, and it's surrounded on all sides by pretty steep hills. There's various ones. Some insurance companies actually want you to be able, from memory, to provide a list of hurricane holes. Now in Georgetown, there's a couple of places that call hurricane holes, and they're not really sufficient. They're low-lying because of the storm surge. They are not protected in a real hurricane. So getting back to it, the other way is having your boat in the water, and most often you're going to take a boat up into the mangroves. That's one way to do it. Mangroves are connected to the bottom of the ocean by multiple strong, flexible roots, and the mangroves can bend and move around. You might get a few scratches on your boat, but the mangroves will prevent your boat from tearing loose. You do what you call a spider tie. So you have two crossed lines in each side of your boat. So you got four sides of the boat, front, back, left, right. You got two cross lines, what they call spring lines. That'll allow your boat to go up and down in the water without really moving anywhere from side to side or front to back very much. So that's a good plan. Keep in mind that when you have spring lines going out, even to a dock or something, if it's going to be really bad weather, you want every line you've got out there tied to something. Any line that you haven't put out is not doing you any good. One strategy while anchoring in a fairly big bay is to put out two anchors at the same time, not on two separate chains. If you put them on two separate chains, They're likely to get tangled. What happens is when hurricanes come through, because it's a circular pattern of winds, you'll get pulled in one direction and then it'll get turned and you get pulled in another direction. You don't want to be dragging across the ocean floor with those kind of big winds. If you have two anchors set about 10 feet apart, then if one gets pulled out, it'll have a chance to start setting. By the time the other one gets pulled out, the first one will have set. So it's a better strategy. I've seen it used. Of course, you can make your own decisions on that. I've seen people try to use engine blocks and stuff like that. That just doesn't work real well. I mean, it's better than nothing, but you're not going to survive a really big hurricane that way, probably. One thing to keep in mind is the man-made synthetic fibers used for the docking lines on a boat, polyethylene, polypropylene, there's a couple others, nylon. They deteriorate in ultraviolet light, so you need to check your lines and make sure that they're still up to the job of holding your boat in place. You know, if in doubt, go buy some more line. Just get ordinary rope and use it and tie off. At the same time, you're going to want to check your cleats. Some cleats don't have any backing plate on them. It's not uncommon for them just to have stainless steel washers behind them. Now, there's two different aspects for cleats. If they're pulling up and down at all, the cleats with just washers are more likely to get ripped right out of the deck. If they're pulling sideways, then they have a lot more strength. If you have the opportunity, go ahead and put backing plates on. Or if you can do a bigger, thicker washer, that's always an option. But when you tie it, make sure you tie it so that it's pulling sideways as much as possible. Very often when people are using a line or rope to tie to a dock or even the mangroves, they will put a loop on the cleat on the boat and then tie it down at the dock level or at the mangrove level. That's not the way to do it. You want it just the opposite. You want to be able to untie both ends, but definitely on the cleat, you're going to want to use the standard cleat wrap and lock. And you want the other end to be your bitter end, your open end on the rope, so that you can adjust it. You know, storm surges can come in. I've seen them 12 feet come in, but 15 feet is possible according to some records. 6 feet is not unusual at all. If your boat is suddenly raised 6 feet in the air, you're going to have to adjust your lines, you know, one at a time and very carefully. Storm surge is actually one of the very destructive things, along with rain. Your boat may have other places that you will want to tie a line to. A winch is a good example. Winches are usually sturdily mounted to your boat. You know, you will want to be able to adjust it. You can run the winch, so run the line in, run the line out. That's a possibility. If your boat is older or has a Samson post, that's another option. A Samson post is it's like a different type of cleat. Think of it that way. It's a solid mounting point, but it's not quite the same as a cleat. The next thing you're going to want to do is reduce any wind loading. That means anything that's sticking out in your boat, you want to put it somewhere so the wind's not going to catch it. As an example, you know, most people have their head sail and they wrap a few twists of line around it. In a hurricane, it's going to catch at the top and it's going to start unraveling it, and as soon as it comes a little bit, it's going to put more and more pressure, because you might have winds 200 miles an hour going out there, and it's going to put tremendous pressure on your mast. You do not want to be dismasted. I highly suggest that you take your head sail down, fold it up, put it in your cabin before the hurricane really starts. Now on your mainsail, that can depend. Mainsails are often surrounded by a stack pack, and if you can zip it up and it doesn't really have anything sticking out to catch the wind, you might be able to leave your mainsail on there, although many people don't have that kind of enclosure, so they just take the mainsail down also. Again, fold it up, take the battens out. tape the battens together. The battens are those long plastic stiffeners that run through the mainsail. Tape them together and then tie them multiple places, maybe along a deck rail or something like that. Anything that's going to stick out, you're going to want to take down. If you've got some flimsy or hinged solar panels, you're going to want to take those down, put them in the cabin. If you've got rescue equipment, rings or something of that nature, safety light, these throw overboard, ropes you can throw overboard. If you got a man overboard, take those in. Those are going to go flying. Your dinghy should never be left in the water. If you're on the hard, you can put the dinghy on the hard ground, stake it in, and fill it with water to give it ballast so it stays there. Taking it inside your cabin is a good option. If you're in a boat with davits, like a catamaran, what you're going to want to do is not just have the davits holding it up. You're going to want to put ratchet straps on the side and absolutely pull the plug from the bung hole that lets water out of the back so it doesn't become too heavy from rainwater. You'd be surprised at how much they can weigh when you fill them up full of water. If you have a wind generator, do not depend on the mechanical brake or even electric brake. You're going to want to turn on the mechanical brake and then tie that down with rope so it cannot spin under any circumstances. If it's got the type with the foldable blades, fold them. Same with your radar unit. Now the radar unit is up high, but they're usually just riveted onto the mast, and with enough force it'll just snap it right off the mast. You're going to want to tie it to the mast as tight as you can. If your boat has scuppers on the side, that's little openings to let water out, you're going to want to make sure that those are completely open and nothing blocking them. Similarly, if you've got a cockpit with drains in it, make sure all the cockpit drains are open and flowing well. If you are at a dock, and by the way, I would not suggest a stationary dock, it will fall apart between the waves and the boats pulling on it. But if you're on a floating dock that's a good, secure, modern one, and you don't think you're going to get a direct strike, you're okay, but disconnect the power lines, disconnect the water. Your boat is going to be moving up and down quite a bit. You're going to want to have pretty much every fender you've got deployed. At a minimum, you need 6. I usually run 8, that's 4 on each side, and I keep one separate fender as a roving fender in case something's coming towards me and I need to deflect it off. Personally, I think ball fenders are good for that. Make sure that your engines are running and that your batteries are fully charged. Make sure all your hatches are closed, and if it's got double latches on each hatches, do both of them. If you have boats next door to you, make sure your masts and your spars do not line up. If one boat, particularly monohulls, they tend to roll a lot more in a hurricane. Catamarans do a little bit, but not as much. On my boat, I had a monohull next to me in Hurricane Irma, and it rolled over and tangled with my rigging and took down the mast. You don't want that. You just offset each boat. Make sure that all your bilge pumps are operating. And my insurance company requires me to have an additional huge bilge pump that's portable that I can take from bilge to bilge depending on if one starts taking on water. Make sure that your radio is working on 16, and if you are in a marina, see what channel they're on. Most radios these days you can run 2 channels at the same time. Tell the marina that you're going to be in your boat if you are going to be in it, or that you're not going to be in your boat if you're not going to be in it. Now, the first law of the sea is that if somebody's in trouble, you have to help them. Now, for this, it's a more practical matter. If let's say the hurricane is just getting close, or the edge of it is just hitting you, and somebody's sail comes by, you go out and help them with that sail. But that means they'll come out and help you too. Before you decide to stay in a certain area, make sure that your insurance company covers you for a named storm. A lot of insurance companies don't cover you at all for a named storm these days, or if they cover you, it's at a reduced amount. You might decide that if you have 2 weeks notice go the opposite direction as fast as you can and get out of there. Many people will advise that you remove your mast. It's not a bad idea, although it's generally difficult and expensive and you need a crane to do it. Any good marina should have a crane that will remove the mast, and then you strap it to your boat deck while it's down. That does help. It keeps some of the wind from catching on things on your boat, because then you'll have removed several lines and the mast itself as well as the boom. Removing your mast will also reduce the likelihood of a lightning strike. Hurricanes and cyclones do produce a lot of lightning just because the friction of the air moving across the clouds. You should have a contact list written down separately so that you can tell your family and friends that you're okay should the hurricane come right at you and become big news. Now, two things that Voodoo Marina does for hurricanes that I think are very helpful. One, they have what they call cyclone pits. If you have a monohull, they will drop the keel down into the pit and set the hull against stacks of used automobile and truck tires, and that prevents it from tipping over. I'll show pictures from Carriacou where they had rows of boats up on stands holding them up, and they just all got blown over in a row. That's happened more than once. Also, catamarans have gotten flipped over. They have to be staked to the ground, and even then it's a little bit iffy sometimes, but if you have 8 straps, the big straps that hold like tons, and then they drive 3/4 inch rebar into the ground to form an X, and then you mount the strap to the middle of the X and then to your boat. Also at Voodoo Marina, they have a row of surge protectors. It's basically a big strap with a whole bunch of tires that go across it. The entrance there is fairly narrow, and they block it off with this floating barrier, and any surge comes in and hits that and doesn't go as hard into the marina itself. Before the cyclone hits, fill up your fuel tanks and fill up your water tanks. That has 2 reasons to do that. First, when a cyclone or hurricane does hit, everything is in short supply afterwards. You may not get fresh water, and you may not get fuel. Second, it adds weight to your boat, so your boat is less likely to get flipped over, less likely to get rolled over, makes it ride a little steadier in the waves. Just a good thing to do, fill everything up. Likewise, make sure you have enough food and medication on board if you need medication. Some antibiotics is also a good idea. Flashlights and batteries for your flashlights or other devices, that's often very helpful. And reprovision your boat just as though you're going for a long passage. Again, everything is in short supply after a cyclone comes through. Everybody's going to be desperate for food. You're probably going to give some of yours away if you come through okay. People need the help. Beyond the water in your water tanks, you should also have a bunch of bottled water with you. The bigger bottles are often easier to store. The little bottles are easier to drink. The thing is, people need about 3 liters, maybe a gallon per day. So it's good to have a lot of water there. You know, you might have trouble with your electricity and not be able to use the water pumps. So having the bottled water might save you. And then people ask, what is a hurricane or a cyclone like? Well, first of all, it's really, really noisy. The wind is howling, things are getting thrown all around, your boat is bouncing all over the place, everything's creaking and groaning, and it kind of sounds like a freight train when it's coming through. It's just amazing how noisy it is. When the cyclone passes, everything's going to be a mess. Things on the ground, you'll have palm fronds and tree branches and pieces of equipment that have gone thrown around. The water around your boat's going to be really dirty, so you might be thinking, oh, I can just run my water maker and make some fresh water. Well, you might not want to do that, because if there's so much junk in the water, your filters are just going to plug up and then you won't have that access. If your boat is doing well and you do have a water maker and you do have solar still, You might want to wait till the harbor opens and then go out in some deeper water where it's a little cleaner and run your water maker there so you can help other people with fresh water. Fresh water really becomes a problem after a cyclone. Be sure to clean up the area around your boat and on the land as soon as you're able. Don't be that person who just sits there and watches other people work. Cyclones and hurricanes are very damaging and people will need assistance. I always keep a few emergency space blankets on hand. I don't have a bunch of regular blankets on the boat, but you know, the space blankets, if somebody's lost their house, lost everything, you can really be a great assistance to them. Try to have a contact list of the fire station, police station, the local hospital, an ambulance, things like that. This is your opportunity to shine. Be a hero. Click on the comments section to see the subscribe button, and please like and subscribe. It does really help me and it's free.